Hi everyone! So I made a little video of mom making fatayers to share with everyone, and the story behind this is that a lot of times mom wants to make some of Meme's recipes, but Meme never wrote down her recipes and always said 2 scoops of this, or you just feel it, and there was never any way that that the memories were preserved unless you kind of went directly behind Meme and watched her do what she was doing. And even then it was probably also just a guessing game as to how you would make the recipes. So mom was on FaceTime with Regina, and we had the great idea of filming what mom was telling to Regina. So you'll hear Regina in the background. And it's just kind of a little project that we pieced together. We kind of caught her when she was flattening out the dough and then putting the already made filling into the dough and then baking it. So it's kind of at the halfway point, but you'll see we have a little clip about the dough making, and we also have a little like verbal instruction on how to make the spinach filling as well as the meat filling as well. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you are able to save the video and refer back to it many years down the road and have your own successful batch of fatayers. Okay, thank you.
Hello, family. Today I just wanted to share with you how I make fatayers. So what I do first is I love this recipe that I found and adapted in a Lebanese cookbook, and I make it in my KitchenAid with the dough hook. And so what I do first is you just mix your water, yeast, and sugar together, give it a little stir, let it bloom for about 10 minutes. And then you add your egg and your oil as per the recipe. And the little change in the recipe is I add 2.5 teaspoons of salt instead of what's in the recipe. And I let that whirl around until that's mixed together. And then I add 2 cups of flour right off the bat. And I let that mix until there's no lumps left in the batter. And then I add another cup of flour, or 1.5 cups, and I do exactly the same until the batter is smooth again. Then I add my last cup of flour, and then I let it go around until it's smooth, or until the flour starts coming, or the dough starts coming off of the sides of the bowl. So depending on the day, which is strange because some days you may take more flour and other days you don't take as much flour, you will always use the total amount of 5 cups. But you still have to just keep adding to it until the dough comes away from the sides of the bowl. If it's not coming away in a ball, it's not ready. You have to keep adding flour, and I just add a little bit at a time, maybe like 1/4 cup at a time. And then when it does come off the sides of the bowl, if you touch the dough and it's still super sticky, I keep adding a little bit more flour to it until it's not so sticky. Once it reaches that point, I take it out of the bowl and put it onto the generously floured counter, and I knead it for a couple of minutes until it's no longer sticky. Form it in a ball, and then I spray my bowl with some cooking spray, or just grease it with some oil, and put the dough in it. And then I also cover the top of the dough with some oil as well, just with your hand, and then cover it with saran wrap and a towel, and then let it rise for anywhere to from an hour to an hour and a half. It will come up well over this, up above the top of the bowl. Then I have put a cloth on the table, and I flour the top of the dough. And then I cut it into little balls. I usually cut 5 at a time, little pieces of dough, and then I dip them in a bowl that's flour. I dip each one in, and then I roll it into a ball with my hands. Ask what size of a ball, it's usually about the size of a ping pong ball, because it's going to double in size. So I lay those all out on a cloth, and then before I put them down on the cloth, I dip the top of them again in flour, just because you want a nice floured top surface so it doesn't stick to the cloth that you cover it with. So how I roll the dough into little balls is I take the piece of dough, and I roll it with the palm of my hand and the tops of these fingers in my next hand. So I roll it, keep turning it over like this, and roll it somehow or another. end up coming into a little ball of dough. It's okay if it's not completely smooth on the bottom, as long as the top is nice and smooth. After I have about half of the balls out, I take another cloth, not a really heavy weight cloth, and I wet it with lukewarm water, but I give it a good wring out. And then I cover the dough balls with that, and then I continue to make the rest of my dough balls and cover the entire thing with a dampened cloth. And then put one more covering of a cloth over the top. Again, not a super heavy cloth. It can be tea towels. And then I let them rise for about another hour to an hour and a half, probably about an hour and a half, I guess, until they're doubled in size. You want your room nice and warm. Then I make the filling at this point while I put out the balls and it's rising. If I'm making meat Fatayers, like, I don't have an exact amount because I make it out of my head, but if I was to give the best amounts possible, I would say let me go back 1 second. So that dough recipe for me makes anywhere between, depending on the day, around 44 Fatayers. Some days you'll get 47 out of it. And for that amount of dough, I would use almost 2 pounds of meat. And I use extra lean ground beef. I put in a couple of good size onions, like 2, medium onions in there. And I personally don't like to chop the onions by hand and have chunks of onions in the meat. I like it pureed, so I stick it in a little blender or food processor, and I puree the onion and then put it into the meat. Then I put some pine nuts. I like to toast my pine nuts in a nonstick pan with no grease, get them a little toasty because it brings out the flavor of the pine nut more. And I put that in the meat. I put lots of salt and pepper. I also put some sumac. I love sumac in the meat because it gives it a nice little tart flavor as well. And I put a container of high-fat yogurt, plain, just plain yogurt. I put a good 500 mils of yogurt in, so it will be an entire small tub of yogurt. You want the meat really nice and moist. And if it's not that moist, and add a little bit more yogurt, and mix that all together. Well, I don't mind tasting raw meat, so I will taste it for flavor. And then that's for the meat filling. For the spinach filling, for that amount of dough, I would take, I don't know if you like a Costco size bag of spinach, probably about a good bag and a half. Chop it up. It doesn't have to be chopped up like tiny. Just give it a good chop. I add a good 2 big onions to that, and I do chop them up fine. Not super fine like a minced consistency, but just not big hunks of onion. Again, toasted pine nuts. I love feta cheese in mine, so I just I used to cube it, but you can crumple it kind of coarsely. And as much feta as you like, lots of sumac, salt, pepper. I don't put any garlic in mine, but that's up to you, however you like to spice them. And I put lots of lemon juice and olive oil. And taste it, because you want it nice and tart, because when you want that tartness to come through when you bite into the Fatayers. So spinach, onion, pine nuts, lots of sumac, salt, pepper, lemon juice, and oil. So now going back to the dough, I usually take a wooden board or a cutting board, and I generously flour the top of the board, because as I take my balls out, I put them on the big floured part of the board, and I take the ball and I turn it over so both sides are floured on that nice floured part of my board. Then I very gently flour the rest of the board that I'm going to actually flatten the dough on. I just go like this with my, so sticky, like this, and then when I get partial, which isn't very big, then I take it and I pinch and stretch the outside of it. So I turn it and pinch it, and that way I don't touch the middle of it because it stretches out. It's a little too sticky. And that way your dough is because it should be, it's fluffy and there's no little holes in the middle. It's pretty
Yes.
So that's all I do, and yeah, because the fatire dough is a little stretchy anyways. And then, so then I go like this, I kind of pinch it and turn it in my hand at the same time.
Yeah.
And then I'm not touching the middle of it at all. And then at the end, I might give it a little stretch around, like, yeah. And you don't want it to, you don't want the dough really sticky either, because if it's sticky, then they're going to stick together in the pan because they're going to be gooey. But you don't want to overflour it either, because then they won't pinch together. But you don't want it sticking in your hand, like,
Yeah, I see how
yeah,
it's just,
yeah, because if it's sticking in your hand and you go to put them in the pan, the dough will all stick together, like the fatires will stick and they'll break. And like I said, spinach fatires they're a lot more time consuming to do as opposed to meat, but boy, are they ever good.
But you'll eat all them. You can't freeze those.
Oh yes, you can freeze them. They freeze perfectly. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah, because when, think about it, when you get spanakopita and all those frozen spinach things.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, and they freeze really well, Regina.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just put them in baggies or like Ziploc bags or?
Yep, Ziploc. So right here, this is about the same amount of meat Renee's showing you that I would put in a meat fatire. And I've pat it down a little bit so that you don't have a whole lot of doughy centers, like a whole lot of doughy corners.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because they get really hard. Yeah.
Yes.
So
the other day, I used a cookie sheet, and then I only had a few left, so I just used a rectangle, like 9 by 13 pan, but it was darker. So, of course, the bottoms got all really brown.
It's amazing.
At the same temperature at the same time. I was like, what? I said, Marianne said that if it was a dark pan.
It's a dark pan, they'll burn all the time. If
you were making meat and you used parchment paper, would you still use the butter?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
It kind of gives it flavor, doesn't it?
It does give it flavor. And it definitely gives it a nice flavor.
And so my burner, I know there's a burner on the bottom of my stove, but there's an actual burner that you can see, and that's on the top. Yeah. I put them on the bottom rack, like you said. And I found the bottoms cooked well. Yeah. But the tops were really fair.
When you put them on okay. Well, then maybe your oven is different. Do you cook them on convection?
I didn't use convection. I just used regular. Should I use convection?
I use convection.
Oh.
But then again, maybe I should use regular. A bit of dough. I flour my board really well on the top. Because you don't want them too sticky. And so like this, and then you want a little dusting of flour here, and then you pat them down a little bit and go in a circle so that they're nice and uniform, and then I take the edge and I pinch it and stretch it at the same time, and I don't do anything with the middle of it, because if you stretch out the middle, then you'll end up with holes. That way there's no holes in it. And I do it till it's about, I just learned today, about 5 inches. You want enough flour on the board so that your hands aren't sticking to the dough. And yeah, if you do them in a circle, they'll stay in a circle.
The dog is going crazy here. I have to stand up because I'm afraid of it.
And then you just put enough in the center of it. Like that. I usually make 4 at a time because it's quicker than doing it that way, and I always have to rub my hand on some paper towel to fold them. So fold them in the middle and pinch towards the center so you don't pinch out. And then I take it exactly here in the center, bring it up, and pinch towards the center, and then you just shape it a little bit if it's not perfect. And so pinch towards the center, and if your hand's sticking to the dough, give it a little bit of flour. And like this. There. Again, pinch towards the center, take the middle. And make sure they're really sealed well. It's harder with spinach than it is with meat because of a little bit of they're juicier.
Is that why you wipe your fingers?
Never lift my fingers.
No, wipe your fingers on the paper
Oh, wipe
towel.
my fingers. Oh, yeah.
And then what's in your mix here? You've got cut up spinach, about 2 big Costco bags, feta cheese, sumac, white onion, lemon juice, pepper, salt.
Yep, that's it.
And toasted pine
And
nuts.
toasted pine nuts.
Okay. You do it until it tastes nice.
On 440 for my oven, that works well. And I put the rack all the way down the bottom, like just pretty well down the bottom. Fatayers are ready on bake. Took probably a little bit longer, again, about 29 minutes, but they should be nice and golden brown. Oh yeah, perfect. So the difference between these is the bottoms are going to be nice and crispy. So we did end up putting a little bit of butter, and I don't know if you can tell the difference, but you see how you got that nice little shiny, greasy finish as opposed to that, yeah, perfect, as opposed to just really dry. So that's it. Then you take them out of the pan and you just stand them up in here, and that's your Fatayers.